Welcome to AIM on Air, the official podcast of the Association for Intelligent Information Management. Founded in 1944, AIM is dedicated to advancing the information management industry, and AIM offers future-focused and technology-enabled certification, education, events, and resources. Whether you want to increase your organization's AI readiness, succeed with a large information or data project, improve processes, or enhance workplace collaboration, AIM is the place for you. We represent a vibrant global community of information leaders committed to driving exceptional business outcomes through intelligent information management. You can learn more about AIM at AIIM.org. Now, you may notice this is a new voice on our podcast. I am your new host. My name is Tori Miller-Liu, and I am the president and CEO of AIM. With AIM on Air, we want to uncover stories from our members about their careers, their current priorities, and where this industry is headed. Today, I am very pleased to welcome the 2024 chair of the AIM Board of Directors. She is responsible for future of work thought leadership and research at WebEx by Cisco. She is a true thought leader in our industry and has an impressive resume working for companies like Gartner and Tech Vision Research. Please welcome to AIM on Air, Karen Hobert. Hi, Karen, welcome.
Tori, oh wow! Now I'm talking up to that intro. That was fabulous. Thank you.
I'll be your new hype man any day.
Yeah.
So, Karen, I'm so excited to have you as my first guest as host of this podcast, particularly because it's been such a big year for AIM with this new strategy, and we're also celebrating our 80th anniversary. So, just to kick us off, I'm really curious, what are your goals for AIM this year as chair of the organization? What do you want to accomplish?
Well, you're right. This is a big year, and happy 80th birthday. I can't believe that. So my goal as chair this year is really to start to make things happen. We spent the last year building out the strategy system. We introduced it to members just last week. And, I really want to start implementing that. So my goal is to, how do we engage the board to participate in that implementation? How does the board provide the kind of support that's needed for you, Tori, or the staff, or even the AIM membership? And really start driving forward those initiatives that we've identified. So it's a doing year. We're rolling up our sleeves and doing stuff.
Oh, I love that, especially how proactive you're being about and getting the leadership engaged and getting everyone involved to make this succeed. So I'm curious, you mentioned initiatives, and obviously folks can go to our website and look at the strategy themselves, but what do you think is really important for our community to understand about this new strategy system?
I think we're really taking new mindsets and approaches to what AIM is all about. Part of our work in building this strategy was really to take a design thinking, sort of strategic foresight approach. And one really key exercise that we did was the orthodoxies, like identifying the orthodoxies, which we did some with the leadership council as well as the board of directors. But by doing that work, we really got to sort of delve into what were the thought or the mindset processes that we had that might be so ingrained that they're hindering us or preventing us from reaching our goals or supporting our membership as we aspire to. So that exercise really helped us to sort of reframe our thinking and helped us to become maybe a little bit more risk adverse, but also able to take risk. I mean, it's two sides of a coin. We're able to say, okay, here are the risks, but also let's take a risk and do some changes and make some radical differences, because we know if we stay here in our old mindsets, we might not get where we want to go. But we also know that we have to be bold and make some bold changes. And but now we know what to address and we know how to address it. And I thought, that exercise was very important, and it really did lead us to very constructive conversations and ideations on things we could do. And, not just building out the objectives, but also things we can do and how we can proactively move forward in this new mindset. So to me, that was the biggest part of our process.
I certainly agree with you. I'm having participated in the process myself. It felt like it was a lot of self-reflection that led to transformation. So I'm curious from your perspective, do you think AIM started 2023 in a different state? And if so, what does the AIM of today look like? What do you want people to know about the AIM of today?
Oh. Well, I just got a reminder on LinkedIn today that I've been 4 years now on the board of directors at AIM. Wish me a happy birthday.
Happy
Um,
birthday.
but that's important because I've been on the board of directors under a different CEO, Peggy, who really established in her time a certain way of doing things at AIM. But I think we also found ourselves sort of at a kind of an impasse. It's like, okay, now we've got some of these things that Peggy came in to fix up, and they were maybe a little more operational or whatever. And now we have these we need to think about the future, and we need to really delve into the future. Um and that's kind of where we were at the beginning. We had tons of ideas. I remember being in board meetings, with tons and tons of ideas in 2022 leading up to 2023. And it was so hard to organize them and put them down on paper and choose which was the right one, because there were so many ideas coming in strategically from the board, ideas and so forth. So coming into 2023, we had tons of ideas, but we didn't have a lot of organization around them. And I think going through this process has helped us to streamline and align all of our thinking, our mindset as a board, and all of our sort of messaging, but also goals and objectives. So now we're all sort of in alignment, and we can take our good ideas and turn them into something.
Isn't that funny that day after day at AIM, we preach the good practices that cure organizations of their information chaos. And here we are struggling with almost a strategic chaos in a way, right? Like so many ideas, almost a reactive mindset, right? Like so many ideas because we were trying to react to a really rapidly evolving industry. And for me, at the end of 2023, I think we've shifted pretty dramatically to a proactive stance where instead of reacting to the trends and the emerging technologies around us, we're leading the way now, and we're advancing AI, we're enabling emerging technologies, we're encouraging innovation.
Mhm.
Do you feel the same way? Do you feel like we're perhaps more proactive now with this strategy?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, just laying out the objectives sort of puts a framework around where we can be proactive, where we can be proactive as a board, but also where we can be proactive, AIM as an organization, what AIM can do. And then also potentially and hopefully as we bring out this strategy system into the community where members can be proactive too, and where they can get involved. And so it really is all encompassing as far as the entire org. But yeah, instead of just again reacting to all the information that's coming in, we now have a framework to say, oh, that belongs over here in this part of our strategy, or in this guiding principle, so to speak. And here are some things we're doing around it, and we can prioritize around those things. Now we can say, yeah, sometimes you have to walk before you can run, and so we're here, but that's a great thing to put into the system for next year or the following year. And that was one thing that we did when we were sort of coming up with these ideas. Again, there were so many ideas. We actually put some time frames around them. Like, what could we do now? And what what might take longer to do, and how, where to, and maybe have dependencies on other things. So let's put them in the framework, and then also look at them from a temporal standpoint and say, okay, this is something that's going to take us some time to do, but it's a great idea. Let's make sure we keep in mind that we want to do this. Right.
Yeah. And I felt like that understanding of there's a timeline, there's phases, there's a roadmap sort of permeated the entire process, because we ended with a roadmap of saying, okay, this is what we're going to do in the near term, in literally the next quarter, the next 3 months, this is what we can accomplish. And then we'll decide at the end of that 3 months what we're going to do next, right? But we also started the process with a foresight exercise where you and the rest of the board collaborated with other members, with our leadership council, with AIM fellows, to predict or look at what the industry is going to look like 2 years from now and 10 years from now. So, from where we're sitting today, if I challenge you to say, what are the next 2 years of this industry going to look like? What's your response to that?
Well, if I didn't say AI, I get drummed
Everyone
out.
would wonder why.
I get drummed out of technology, I think.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be in this business, but because actually, I one of the executive leaders here at Cisco, we had a sort of a town hall, and he said, he'd come back from Davos, and he goes, every other word was AI, even if it isn't a word. But everybody was talking about it. So, I mean, AI is huge. And in the next 2 years, it's going to be huge for all organizations. And there's a lot we can do and need to do to prepare for it, right? Cisco did a survey last fall on AI readiness, and while 84% of the companies that participated in the survey said, AI will have a significant impact on their business, and 97% said the urgency to deploy AI has increased. Only 14% of the organizations worldwide said they were ready to fully integrate AI into their businesses. That's a lot of preparation that needs to happen. And information management is at the middle of that. I've been talking about, in IT, we talk about people, process, and technology. And I changed that to, no, it's people, process, and technology around information and data. It's what's in this, information and data is at the center of that. You can't have processes, you can't have people, you can't have the technology without the information and the data. So being at the core of this, it's key to readiness. So it's super germane to this profession and to members of AIM. So that's a 2-year view.
Yeah. And can I just ask, just for listeners who aren't as familiar with information management, why is information management key to AI readiness? Say I'm head of an organization that doesn't necessarily have an information management program or staff devoted to that. Why should I care about information management if I'm looking at investing in AI?
Well, information management is key to a lot of things in business. I mean, when we think of AI right now, today, our minds immediately go to, chat GPT, chat interfaces, but there's also lots of other AI, at work in business, and has been at work for a long time in business. Just thinking of the content services industry, there's AI that's been in technology for auto tagging content and information and doing data analytics. That's been there. It's already being used, right? And so the chat stuff is newer, but we all hear about inaccuracies with chat. We hear about hallucinations with chats only because chat has to give an answer, right? And so we hear about these issues. Why does information management matter? Because if you can't find the information and the data to feed into the models that go behind chat or even go behind any other standard AI, you're not going to get the results you need to run your business. So if you're doing data analytics on, say, sales metrics, and you're trying to forecast potential new trends, and you have tons of data to parse through, business analytics and the AI there can help you to find those things, but only if you know where the information is that you need to feed into that system, and B, that it's available and organized in a way that's useful to the systems. And information management is really about being able to navigate and find all the information that's necessary for a given process, for a given business need or a business process, whether that's searching through in a chat bot to find an article that is most important to share with a customer because it's going to help them solve a problem. All of that needs to be findable, needs to be available. A lot of that has to do with the metadata and tagging, and this is where information management comes in. And the idea of, well, if we all just put it in one repository, everything would be fine. That's
I want to work for that company.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's not realistic. So information management is knowing, well, what repository does have that information, and can we access it, and can the systems that need the information access it and get to what they need?
What's really interesting for me about that comment, by the way, is full disclosure. When I started at AIM, I kind of was under the mistaken impression that information management was really about the storage and the retention and the deletion of data and information, and almost a very static activity. But you and others have taught me that it's really what you're describing. It's movement. It's the access and movement and exposing the information so it's actually useful. It's not static at all. It's this constant wave of data that's moving that someone has to be responsible for. And I think it's safe to say that as these AI engines come into enterprises, not only will you need the information to make them effective and make the AI engine actually useful, but you got to do something with the output. So how, when you're talking to organizations and thinking about the future of work, what happens to the output of AI, and how should organizations be thinking about that?
Well, some of the output of AI is just more information, right? It's just like it's coming out in a new format or in a different way. So there's the need to be able to, well, what do we do with that output? Where do we put it? Where do we store it? How do we manage it, tag it, make it available, or protect it? I mean, the process you were talking about where it's static and it's retention, that is a extremely important business process, but it's one of the processes, right? Mm-hmm. And even so, there is an accessibility piece to that. In other words, you might need to actually do some discovery, or you might need to do some actual, request for information from a regulatory perspective. That's why you do that process. And so everything that comes back to sort of the output of AI that has to go into all of those processes as well. It doesn't just come out and, you know, it doesn't just come out and then it's there. We've created a bunch of artifacts. It needs to be, hate to use this term because it's kind of overused, but it needs to be actionable. It needs to be put into action, whatever that action is. And sometimes the action is you need to then store it. This was the output, or the output was used in, in sales forecasting, or creating a new program, right? And all of those outputs become more information. So things will grow exponentially, right? And now, as if anybody has been following Chat GPT in the news or just GPTs in general, a lot more stuff is being created that needs to be scrutinized, for accuracy, for IP, issues, for so many other things that are even external to just creating the document that you need, or the information that you need. Right. So it becomes, it's becomes a bigger ball of wax. Right. So we thought wrapping our arms around all the information we have today is big.
Yeah.
It's getting bigger.
Yeah, you wonder, I don't hear people talking about big data as much anymore, and maybe because we're dealing with exponential growth in data to the point where it's almost unfathomable, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we're talking about terabytes a day in the
Yeah.
world, right?
Mhm.
And I think your analogy, the ball of wax, is really appropriate because in my mind, the repercussions of AI, and not negative repercussions, it's just sort of fact, is that growth of data, and that has physical implications on data farms, on servers, on the number of servers you have. So going back to our earlier conversation about foresight and what it looks like 10 years from now, I would predict that there's going to be a significant need for more data server farms.
Mhm.
There are going to be many more data centers in the world that could have a potential impact on the environment.
Mhm.
It will certainly have an impact on budgets and enterprise operations because you will be spending more money on AI. Even AI, yes, maybe it will cut some costs, but it will add cost to other line items, right?
Mhm.
Do you agree with that prediction? Do you think that'll come true?
I think it's coming true today.
Yeah.
Absolutely 100%. And, there are all the environmental concerns that stand today. And there are, and it also needs, and this is something we've been talking about as a board, for sure, is it also needs more people who understand how to manage their information. In other words, information management isn't strictly in the domain of IT, and it isn't
Mm,
strictly, an IT role. That everyone will become information managers. And it's kind of true today in many parts of the organization. There are, you have librarians in the legal department, you have people who are doing information management in different pockets and departments. But when you think about it, everybody, if we're all generating this stuff and that the AI is taking the labor away from generating this stuff, of course, it's also sort of like the self-propelling prophecy of like, well, if we create more with AI, we need AI because we have too much that humans can handle, right?
mm,
But so we need more AI. But as we keep, working through that, everybody needs to have skills in information management in order to be able to deal with whatever AI is giving us, right? You know,
mhm.
and of course, you can kind of look into, oh gosh, that would be real dystopia if AI just kept spitting out stuff, right? But the idea is really about, we all will be information managers at some point, whether it's
Mhm.
because a process is being done for us and it spits out, let's say, an artifact, a document, a contract. We might have to have humans who go through and make sure that it's tagged correctly and that the information is correct, and that, and validate and verify things, but also, manage that information, say, well, what's the next step in the process with this, right? Where does it
Yeah.
go from there? And so we all have to be information managers. And we've been talking about that in the board. We've been saying,
Mhm.
it's not just the domain of IT. It really is. And, speaking especially with some of our board members who are who work for organizations, or, they they are seeing it. They're seeing even their own job descriptions changing, where
Right.
they've moved, their jobs have moved into the business or into a business unit. They used to be in IT, now they're into the business unit. So it
Yes.
is a big trickle down. Yeah.
And I think one of the big differences that I'm seeing and hearing from our members is that yes, they're losing that title information manager, and it's almost a misnomer. They really should be
Yeah.
called information strategists because they're doing what you described. They're
Mhm.
they're evaluating data, they're placing a value on that data, they're reviewing data for accuracy, they're determining the processes to use that information and data for other processes.
Yeah.
It really is a more strategic systems thinking approach to talking about information and data. That's such a far cry from here's contract A, let me put contract A in box one and let me write down this is contract A in box one, which is still an important skill set, but it's so much broader and more complicated now.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yes, I agree with you. Data storage, information storage, all of that's going to get bigger, is getting bigger.
Yeah.
We're relying on the cloud a lot more for that kind of stuff. And, so yeah, it's happening now and it will be continuing to happen.
Yeah.
The sustainability issue is coming up though, and I think it's a valid one, well, with all these data centers, you know.
Well,
Mm.
and it's funny that you mentioned the cloud because I think you and I actually went back and forth during the development of the strategy because we have an objective that said originally it was called enable artificial intelligence in information management. And
Mhm.
you pushed really hard to expand that to include innovation and emerging technologies.
Mhm.
And you
Mhm.
kept making the point like AI is, of course, the popular kid at school right now. Everybody's talking about AI, but there are other technologies on the horizon. So in your mind, what are some of those technologies that leaders should at least be aware of and maybe even start thinking about?
Well, I mean, I think the cloud and understanding that is I mean, it's happening, it's been happening, and it's gonna get it's going to happen even more. I mean, even if you take it down to, well, what are, technology providers offering up? I mean, they've tripled down on the cloud because it's a business model. It's a different business model than
Mhm.
they've been used to, but it's also, that recurring revenue model is a very legitimate model, and so they will continue to push it onto you. So it's very hard for these tech firms to hold both business models. Let me just say that, they do. I work for one of them, but the it's recurring revenue is a really important business model. So that drives things. I mean, it really does drive, and it pushes, the selling of the cloud and all that stuff. But it is, with people working in so many different places, moving around the world as if you really want to get into strategic foresight and say, well, what kind of climate migration is there going to be of humans
Mm,
around the world? Then you kind of sort of come back to, well, information needs to be available. You can't be on a hermetically sealed LAN, right?
mhm.
With access to your on-premise servers. So I think cloud is a really important one. I believe that augmented reality, virtual reality, the metaverse are also coming around the corner as new experiences, new ways to experience business. And that I'm not sure fully all the information management ramifications of it, but um, we are generating things. Like right now, we're generating a video and we're generating audio. That's big information. Those are bigger files, right? Well, if we're creating something in the metaverse, maybe an augmented reality, what kind of artifacts are we going to create out of that, and
Yeah.
what do we have to manage for that? Moving forward, and making sure that that's available, that our other information can be available to these places. I mean, I I read a really interesting article about a woman who is a lawyer, and she works out of her home. And I guess so she built this during the pandemic, but she created basically a metaverse of her law offices, right? And so literally you get into her metaverse and it's her law office. You have a reception, you have a conference room, you have her office, and people are interacting with each other as well as information, you know,
Mhm.
in this world, and maybe even creating new information, right? So I think that's really, that's something that's maybe a little further out, but something to kind of noodle around with and consider. And maybe the juncture or in between is you know dealing with the fact that a lot of communication of information now is being done very differently than we used to. If I wanted to share something with you, I might create a PowerPoint or a presentation and then share the presentation with you like it was a book or an article or something like that. And so it's a lot of reading. Well, people aren't reading as much. People don't,
Mhm.
I get lots of feedback from younger people in my company that said, just do a little video of what you're talking. And we're generating so much more video content, so much more rich content. And that sort of starts getting into the ball of wax, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do we extract out of that? I mean, AI is already extracting stuff out of it. We're getting transcripts out of them.
Yes.
We're getting tagging on these files of whenever Tori speaks, you can just jump to wherever Tori spoke. We're getting all this feedback on what we're doing. People are overlaying emojis and pictures and words, but it adds to the information, right? Like, gosh, we can do a sentiment analysis just by the emoji stream, right? And this isn't, but it's useful information. It could be extremely useful information. So uh,
Absolutely.
maybe that's a little bit of the middle ground. Like, okay, younger people are communicating information differently.
Well,
And
you're making me wonder about that then. So all these organizations are racing to build their own bespoke large language model so that they can have their own generative AI version of ChatGPT sitting
Mhm.
on their enterprise. But if I'm a company owner and I have, say, 20-30% of my workforce is Generation Z, and they are mainly communicating it via video or emojis or pictures or GIFs. I'm wondering if maybe my money would be better spent on a multimodal model that is curating and collecting and aggregating the images and video and audio. What do you think? Like,
Oh,
do we
wow.
just skip large language models and jump right to
I really got you
emojis?
thinking about that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an either or. Unfortunately, maybe for the poor CIO, but I don't think it's an either or. I really do think that, the way that I recently did a very small sort of pulse check or survey of what I call digital natives, Gen Zs, and their attitudes about the technology they have at work and what they see about the future, future technologies. And it was interesting because their attitudes were very positive and they were very, encouraging. And they said, "Oh no, I have the things I need and I get what I need." But, you know, we know we're going to count on AI a lot more. We already are. And chat things, especially, and a handful of them were programmers. So they talked about how they were really relying on, chat to do programming or check their code and things like that. But a lot of them also talked about how they wanted a more seamless experience because they have so many different apps and interfaces and they're all unique. And there's not like this sort of seamless moving among them, which they need. They need, like, it saves time if I could easily be getting the information I need from wherever I'm already working, right? And the other thing is they asked for a lot of sort of personalization, and even to the extent of that apps should help me with my well-being. And there's this big social aspect to what they're talking about and the interfaces that they're working in. So they're talking about a more holistic experience. And the one thing that jumped out at me while they were talking and things that jumped out at me was like, they live in an app-based world, which means apps often do one thing for you really well.
Mm-hmm.
You can deposit a check and check your bank statement, right? Or you can meet a friend, or you can send a message to somebody, right? There's sort of like these pre-built little easy buttons, right? Applications, things like spreadsheets and Word document, and text documents and presentations, and they are applications. You have to actually do something with them to make them useful,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm gonna give a talk somewhere. I'll bring up a blank presentation in PowerPoint or Keynote or something like that. But I got to do something. Like, it's not a little easy button for me. And living on smaller mode devices like a smartphone with all your apps, the environment is your smartphone, right? And how do
Yes.
the environment is smaller. And so there needs to be, but there's integration there too. You get notifications, you get alerts, you get, there's some more seamlessness, and you can personalize all of that, right? You can say, I want notifications to stand up and take a walk every 30 minutes, right? And that's what I want an alert for, and you might want an alert for something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so personalization, all of that is the experience of work as we move into the future, especially as people are working from so many different places, right? Return to office it's not going to happen, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yes, people will go to the office, but they're going to go to the office to interact, right? And so, I think that I think these, there's going to be a shift in how people communicate in business. And it's being driven by digital natives who are already
Yeah.
living that shift in different modalities, as you said, in multi-modalities, right? In I read a great article about how teens, they get together and they have working meeting like after school to do their homework together, but it's all on FaceTime. They just pull up a FaceTime on all their phones, and then they sit there and they do their work and chit and chat, in the middle, and talk to each other or ask each other questions, and and text each other throughout the process. And they are living this multimodal life already, right?
Yes.
And they're integrating this a little more. And I think there's a lot to this shift in how we will behave and interact with each other over time.
I
And
think you're right.
yeah, and there's an information management aspect to that,
Mm.
which is not only what people are creating and you know the transcripts of the videos that we create, or or the metadata, or even the sentiment data, or I mean there's all of that, but there's also how are we going to work with all the data and information that's going to support those personalized experiences.
Yes. And how do we shift our focus to not just the digital workplace? How are people interacting with our file storage, our shared files, our Teams environment, our Zoom, Slack, Box, whatever you're using? How are they interacting with that? And also look at how are they consuming and generating information on, we'll call it their digital home place or their digital homestead. Like I think you're right. My home is actually my smartphone. My work is my laptop, and they are very disparate experiences.
Mhm.
And I'm probably, it's more organic and more comfortable for me to be on my phone, to the point where sometimes I even do. I've built PowerPoints on my phone. I've edited spreadsheets on my phone because it's just a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm not even a digital native.
You built spreadsheets.
Yeah. All the Gen Zers are probably like, that is so boring. She used her smartphone to do PowerPoint. Boring, but effective.
They're
um,
comfortable with it too. I have a teammate,
uh,
she'll just turn on the camera and start doing stuff, and talking to herself, and then she has this great little video of what she did. I was like, wow, that is, and it's actually kind of cool. It's kind of like
yeah.
really interesting, So yeah, they're comfortable with it, more comfortable than, let's say, I feel with it.
So we've named a number of trends that people might want to think about over the next 10 years, from everything from cloud to different user preferences around
Mhm.
consuming and creating information. Going back to AIM and some of the
Mhm.
initiatives that we're probably going to put together over the next year or so, what are some of the initiatives that you're most excited about that we're going to be doing?
Um, well, I'm really excited that uh we're changing the formats of a number of things with AIM. Like we've done the new CIP exam that has brought in uh technical domains and domains that haven't been covered on the CIP before, like RPAs, and and a bit about AI, and I'm really glad we're you know changing and keeping up with the times, and helping our members to keep up with the times, um and changing our content to align to that. So I'm excited about that. We're going to be changing the format of our conference so that it'll be, we'll have different tracks and different types of talks, so it won't be just more of coming for lectures. There might be more interactive sessions, or more engagement of the community in a different way, right? So that it becomes a richer event and a richer organization, where one of the things that I hear from members is, they love the community. They love to be able to meet people and learn from each other. So, let's make that in-person event a rich experience beyond just the plain old learning, right? Lecture style learning or presentation style learning. That's there, but there are other things I think coming involved and into the agenda, which I love. So that's another thing that we're changing. And I think, even changing our approach to, you know, what can we do to help our membership to really, propel themselves forward in their careers. And that means forward-looking conversations like this one, the one we just had on technology and what's new in technology and how can we support them to learn what they need to do. And also, as I mentioned earlier, sort of opening up the aperture of who we're involved with, right? Who is the typical AIM member? Well, maybe there isn't a typical. It doesn't have to be the IT department only, right? There are other, making it available and accessible what information we provide and what we and our outreach, so that there are people who are further down into the business unit so that they recognize, well, I don't call myself an information manager, but I'm doing information management, right? That's a shift. And I think if we take it even further, it's how do we work with and partner with other organizations that expand that aperture, right? So that we aren't, just, zeroed in on the technologist doing only, one aspect of, say, document retention. We're talking about, maybe there are associations of, information management librarians and, associations that are involved in, with professions and professionals who are doing information as part of their business, right? And so really expansion. I feel like there's this expansion, expansion into the future, expansion into who's involved, expansion into who are we involved with, and what we're presenting. Which could be a super duper tall order because, there's a lot more to cover. But I think that's why we built the objectives and the framework and the system, so we're like, we want to focus on this and we want to focus on, the, emerging technology and innovative technologies, not just AI, there's more to it than this. We want to focus on, on different priorities. And with that framework, kind of going back to our earlier part of the conversation, we can prioritize, we can build and grow.
Yes, and I agree with you. I think both the AIM conference and our new strategy system are shifting us to a point where we still serve professionals, but we're elevating a practice of information management. And it's a different way to think of it. And I love your aperture phrase because it really is opening the aperture and the aperture on a camera, making it this much broader lens and recognizing that we're dealing with a bigger picture today in information management and how we use technology and how we use our data. So, Karen, thank you so much for sharing all these insights and your vision for AIM. I really encourage everyone listening to join Karen and I at the AIM Conference 2024 in San Antonio, April 3rd through 5th. You can learn more and register at aimconference.com. Karen, thank you for joining us. I'm Tori Miller-Liu, and this has been an episode of AIM on Air, where we aim for better business outcomes with intelligent information management. You can learn more at aim.org.